Thank you all for being here today. My name is Corey Williams, and I work here at the Fayetteville Public Library. One thing before we get started, you might notice some evaluation sheets in your chair. If you could fill those out, they do help us plan for future programming. And speaking of future programming, tomorrow Taylor will be leading us on a bird outing down at the Ramble, which is behind the library. So if you want more information on that, we can tell you more about that after the program. But today it is my pleasure to introduce Taylor Long. Taylor lives in Fayetteville, where he works remotely as an interface designer for eBird at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. An avid birder and appreciator of nature across Northwest Arkansas, he also volunteers as the field trip coordinator for the Northwest Arkansas Audubon Society and as an eBird data quality reviewer for the state of Arkansas. And today he'll be telling you some backyard bird identification tips for Northwest Arkansas. So please join me in welcoming Taylor Long.
Hello, everyone. So glad you chose to spend an hour or so this afternoon just thinking about birds. I'm really into birds, as you might have guessed, and we are just going to spend the next little while kind of chatting, if you will, about some of the cooler birds that I think are kind of the next step of, birds beyond what you see at your feeder, but that are still, quite common in our sort of proverbial backyard in Northwest Arkansas. Thank you for the introduction. That actually pretty well takes care of my first slide. I think she covered most of the basics. I do work for the Cornell Lab. I'm an interface designer, so I'm not actually a bird scientist, but part of the reason I work there is because I am a birder. I just like birds. I like going out and finding them. I like learning how to identify them and just learning everything I can about them. So over the last 10 years or so, just being a birder in my personal life has taught me some things that I'll share with you all, and I'm sure there's things that you all know about birds that I might not. So if you want to jump in and add any tidbits at any time, feel free to raise your hand. Yeah, I think that pretty well covers everything, except for my favorite bird, which is the cedar waxwing. We won't be covering the cedar waxwing today. I was very tempted to, but I tried to pick birds that not only are pretty common here, but that feasibly you could go out and see this week. And cedar waxwings are a lot more common here in migration and sometimes in the winter. So I shied away from that one, but it's a good one. So I just had to show you a picture of this awesome bird. All right, so here's what we're going to cover. Just a quick kind of why birds. I'm going to go through 15 birds. I'm going to try to be on time about not spending too much time on each bird, because I don't want to actually use the entire full hour. I want to get you guys out of here and not let you fall asleep on an afternoon. And then just a brief slide at the end with some tips to get started birding. But really, the outing tomorrow was kind of more my idea of a place to dip your toes in the water of actually birding, going out and looking for birds. So if you're into it, I encourage you to come to that outing we have planned tomorrow. It's at 9 a.m. All right, so why birds? People love birds, and what's not to love? They're colorful, charismatic, and can be found in almost every habitat in the world. Throughout human history, birds have inspired us to sing, dance, dress up, even take to the skies ourselves. And when we slow down and take time to pay attention to birds, we get a glimpse of how this whole living world around us is alive and ever-changing. And I think when you become a birder, you're embarking on a sort of never-ending quest. There's over 10,000 species of birds on this planet. You'll never learn everything there is to know about birds. But that means you'll never get bored, right? And if you're like me, you also might never leave your home without your binoculars again. So, fair warning. So before we get into the birds I've chosen, we have to at least acknowledge our common feeder birds that are also wonderful in their own right. These are the sort of classic birds I think of when I think of a bird feeder set up in this part of the country. You've got chickadees and titmouse and cardinals and blue jays. All wonderful, all deserving of their own attention, but we're going to skip over those birds today, and we're going to take the next step into the birds that you might not have seen just because they don't come to bird feeders, but they're out there. They're just a little more hidden. A theme with a lot of these birds is that they like seeds, right? They're seed eaters. So a lot of the birds we cover are actually going to be shying away from that sort of guild of birds, with a few exceptions. But just gotta give props to these guys because they're good too. All right, so now we go beyond the feeder. All right, so in Northwest Arkansas, we actually have well over 300 species of birds that can be seen at some time of year here. We're only going to cover 15, right? 300 is too many. 15 is a good start, I think. These I've picked out sort of randomly. They're definitely birds you're going to think of that I didn't put up here. That's okay. I've had to come to peace with that too. I think the list I started with was like 30, and I whittled it down to 15. So for each of these, I'm going to show you a picture. If you want to call out what you think it is before I put the name up, go for it. But we'll go through what it's called, how we identify it by sight, in many cases what they sound like, and then I'll show you some maps of where they spend their time throughout the year, because most of these birds don't spend all their time here. And then we'll go through a few fun facts for each. So that's the kind of template here. You ready to get rolling? All right. Bird number 1. I'm going to try playing sounds as part of this too. I've got a speaker set up here. I've got a fiddle with my phone. So we'll get into a rhythm, but you'll have to bear with me for this first one. In case, actually as an aside, in case any of you use the Merlin Bird ID app, which the Cornell Lab does build, shameless plug. I'm just using Merlin to play songs here. So nothing special here. All right, so you see this beautiful red bird, and you hear, if I turn this on, and you hear this song. All right. Does anyone know what this bird is? I know some of you do. Want to call it out? Summer tanager. Yes. Beautiful. At first glance, you might see this red bird and think it's a cardinal, but no, it's a special bird that we have pretty abundantly here in Northwest Arkansas called the summer tanager. It's pretty large for a tanager. It's got this kind of chunky, hefty bill, and the males are completely red, dazzlingly so. The female is kind of a dull yellow. And yeah, as you heard, they've got a sort of lovely musical warbling song that they do. The best way around here to actually listen out for summer tanagers, I think, is for their call. It's subtle. It's described as pitituck. You hear that? So even throughout the middle of the day, which not all birds do, summer tanagers will just be up in a tree going pitituck, pitituck. And if you get an ear for this, you'll actually find that there are quite a few summer tanagers around in town, in our parks. I expect we maybe could find one on the Ramble tomorrow. But they really like these kind of mixed lowland forests. They're pretty solitary. They spend most of their time kind of in the upper levels of trees. So it's easy to miss them unless you're looking out for them. All right, so here's one of our cool maps. I've got these for all the birds. This is an animation that I can play. It's going to go through where the summer tanager is for every week of the year. So they start down in Central America, right? And whoosh, here they come up here. So in the summertime, we get them here, and then zoop, back down to where they spend their winter. So this is a range map of the summer tanager. Pretty cool. We have them here through, they arrive around mid-April, usually leave by October. Rarely, they stick around in the winter here. Every once in a while, someone has one hanging out at a bird feeder that sticks around. There was one year, a few years back, where a bunch were found all over. It happens sometimes, but not too usual. And then a couple fun facts. They look really cool when they're molting. This is a bird that's halfway between its summer plumage and its winter plumage, and that yellow and red mix, where it's, every feather is coming in kind of on its own. At certain times of year, they can just look really cool. They are a bee and wasp specialist, and as I mentioned, they migrate, and every once in a while, one or two hangs out in northwest Arkansas. They're not actually a true tanager like a lot of the other tanagers in Central and South America. They're actually more closely related to cardinals. That was something that once people started doing genetic work, they were kind of moved around in the field guides based on that. And folks around here maybe might refer to them as the summer redbird. If you ever hear people talking about redbirds, I think they're talking about summer tanagers. All right, next bird. I'm going to play its song while we're staring at it. Anyone know what this bird is? Not very colorful, is it? Meet the common but elusive red-eyed vireo. Plain olive green, whitish below, thicker build than warblers, but sort of a similar stature. And adults have a red eye, although it's not always very easy to see. That's where they get the name, red-eyed vireo. That song that I was playing, that kind of simple, hurried, whistled phrases, the mnemonic people like to use is, "Here I am in the tree, look up at the top." They just like to hang out up there where they're not that easy to see. But this is a bird that will sing that song all through the day, all summer long. When every other bird is hiding out and not to be seen, the red-eyed vireos will just still be singing on. So it's a great bird to learn about and look out for in the summer here, because they are really quite common. They just hide. They prefer broadleaf forests, usually up in the foliage, middle to upper level. This is a bird that you can see pretty easily in parks and neighborhoods around here. Here's what their journey looks like from deeper into South America, all the way up. Ooh, they go way up into boreal Canada. They make quite a journey. And we get them just like the summer tanager, kind of mid-April to mid-October, and then they spend the rest of the year somewhere warmer. Fun facts about red-eyed vireo. Like I said, they're known for singing nearly nonstop throughout the day, which has earned them the colloquial name preacher bird. I guess just going on and on makes you a preacher. I don't know. I just learned about that recently. According to Doug James and Joe Neal's Birds of Arkansas, this might be our most numerous forest bird here. The red-eyed vireo, it seems, has actually increased in numbers between the 60s and today. Probably because the Ozarks were really a lot thinner, back then. Like the amount of tree density we have in these hills now is not necessarily what it looked like historically. And they like that. So the more these hills have really filled back in with trees, the more vireos we have. So a good one to look out for. All right, next bird. Little gray fellow. I'll play a call for you. Not much of a song, more of a mew, hiss. This little guy is called the blue-gray gnatcatcher. And when I say little, they are quite little. Tiny, if you will, but long-tailed and thin-billed. Soft blue-gray above with whitish below, thin white eye ring. And the breeding males have that black band across the forehead, which I call an eyebrow. It's quite a thing, huh? If they look at you head on, that it kind of comes down like this. They almost look angry. It's a neat bird to get in the binoculars. They're erratic. They like to spend most of their time in the middle to upper levels of trees. They're looking for insects, just gleaning little bugs off of the branches. And that call that we heard, right, is thin, nasally, wheezy. But it's another one where if you get an ear for it, they really are around here. This is another bird that's quite common around here in forested areas and in parks. But they're little, and they're not very colorful, and they're just hard to see. So it's a really cool one to look out for. They spend their winter almost at the bottom of the U.S., right? But they come up pretty high. They winter, a lot of these birds that winter just on the southern coast. Sometimes you'll have some that stick around in Arkansas. We get some that stay around late, so they're close to that line. But this is still, we're still considered in the summer breeding part of their range. And fun facts about the gnatcatcher. Their nests are made out of lichens and plant fibers, and they're held together with spider webs. They go around and collect spider webs to kind of piece this all together. This is a picture of a nest I found over on the Mount Sequoia Trail on the sort of backside down low. I watched this bird gathering spider webs just down right at foot level on the trail, and then it went way up here and started putting this thing together. So just a cool little cup nest. I just learned this recently, but they can actually build up to 7 nests in a breeding season. That's not because they're raising 7 clutches of eggs. That's just because nests fail so often. But they're just good at keeping on and foraging on, and they can reuse the nesting material. And there's just all sorts of reasons why a nest can fail, but they're pretty good at bouncing back. And I read in a book just the other night that some people call them the little mockingbird, a little gray thing with a long tail. Kind of makes sense, right? All right, that's the blue-gray gnatcatcher. Oh, we've got a warbler. That's a clue. But it doesn't have warbler in its name. I'll play you a call. I can search for it. Okay. This one too. Ooh, that's the secondary call. This is the one you'll hear more. Sort of like a brrrr, zip. Some people describe this like a zipper kind of zipping up. This is the northern parula. This might be our most common breeding warbler here, but also very small. But so pretty, right? I just love the way a parula looks. Short-tailed, it's got a sharp little pointy bicolored bill. It's blue-gray above. It's got this really cool mossy green patch on the back. The males do. The females are a little more kind of overall yellow, but pretty similar vibe. Not different enough that I put a picture up. And yeah, that song, that sort of buzzy ascending trill with a little sharp chip at the end, that's another one that comes springtime here. These things are really out and about in town. Like in my yard, if you get an ear for it, there's just always this thing going off at the right time of year. We have a lot of these birds. They're just hard to see. They love mature woods near water, usually high in the trees, but take well to parks and neighborhoods. Look at how they love Cuba. They spent, Cuba is just ground zero for parulas in the winter, and then they spread out way up into the north, and then that deep purple is just most of all those parulas that are all over the east are just, boom, on that one island in the winter. Do you notice this interesting split in the red here? So the red is the breeding season for parula. They have these kind of 2 distinct, geographic breeding populations, and there's this kind of gap in the middle. I don't know why that is. I think there's some theories about habitat change, but I think it's cool. So, fun facts. Like I said, commonest warbler in the summer here, perhaps. We already talked about the break in their breeding range. Audubon called this the blue yellow-backed warbler, which I think is a pretty good name. It tells us a little more than northern parula. And very controversially, apparently you're supposed to pronounce it perula, but most birders I know say parula. So if you ever want to get into a totally pointless argument, call it a perula and see what the other birders have to say about that. That's the northern parula, though. All right, moving on to a skulky little gray bird. Not so little. Hey, I heard it. All right, let's see if we can play the sound. That's pretty good. Maybe I don't need to play it. Yeah, pretty good. All right, so as you may have guessed, this bird gets its name from its call. But it does sing. They can just go on, and it's kind of an annoying, sort of raspy song. I heard this on the bike trail just this morning, a catbird going off in the woods. Yes, this is the gray catbird, medium-sized, just slightly smaller than a robin, gray body, black cap. But look, it's got this little surprise there, that rusty red under the tail. If you ever get a look at that, you're like, whoa, there's some color there. Like we said about the songs, rambling, halting warbler. There's actually some mimicry in there. Sometimes you'll hear phrases of other birds' songs. It's sort of considered a mimic, like mockingbirds or brown thrashers. But the classic catbird is that harsh meow. That's how you know you've got a catbird in the bush, even if you can't see it. They like dense shrubs, small trees and forest edges, streamside thickets, old fields. All around Fayetteville, anywhere where there's kind of grown-up stuff around fences or edges of yards, there could be catbirds in there. It's a classic urban bird that doesn't always make itself seen, but it is there for sure. And this is another one that overwinters a little bit in the U.S., mostly in Florida. But, during the summertime, we get the wave of them coming up to us. Look at that. We're actually in the sort of southern end of their summer range. They mostly are actually north of us, but we still get them here. We're right on the edge. Sometimes you get catbirds sticking around through December. Every once in a while, like we have a Christmas bird count every year. Often somebody finds one catbird somewhere. They seem to be tolerant enough of winter that until it gets really cold, they'll just kind of hang on, because they don't have that far to go, maybe. All right, fun facts. That song I played that can last up to 10 minutes, they can really just go on and on. They like fruit, so if you want to entice them to your yard, good native fruit-bearing trees and shrubs is the way to go. I mentioned they're rarely here in winter. And some people call them like a slate gray mockingbird or a black mockingbird. I think that's a decent sort of colloquial name for them. I still like catbird, though, better. All right, this beautiful picture doesn't give you very much to go on, right? But this bird, this is probably the way you're always going to see it. Just a little silhouette in the sky, little pointy wings, a little cigar-shaped body. I don't know if I'm going to play I'll play the call. It's all part of the experience of seeing this bird. Usually if you see this bird, you will also be hearing this sound. It's just wheeling above you somewhere, probably right in the middle of town. This is the chimney swift. We have a lot of chimney swifts around here. Maybe not as many as we used to. Chimney swifts really rode the wave of this country being, built up and people having chimneys. They, traditionally were looking for hollow trees to hang out in, to roost in. And it just turned out that chimneys worked really well too. So the theory is that there's probably a rise in the number of chimney swifts as this country was really kind of built out and chimneys were everywhere. And now that big open chimneys that aren't sealed at the top over the summer are less popular, there are fewer and fewer chimney swifts. But we still have quite a few around town. You can see these guys wheeling around throughout the daytime. And if you live near somewhere where there's a chimney that's still open, you might have some that are actually nesting in the chimney. The flying cigar is the way we talk about these things, which I think is a perfect description. It's got a blunt head, squared off tail, long sickle-shaped wings. Not a whole lot of color on this bird. It flies around all day long with really fast little snappy wing beats. And you often see them in small groups, kind of making that twittering sound, cruising around. They're just searching for insects. They're just hunting on the wing for insects all day long. And as we mentioned, they nest and roost in chimneys. This bird, it looks like on this map that they don't spend any time anywhere in the winter, but it's actually just because this is a map that's modeled off of eBird data, and we actually just don't have enough data in the Amazon where people think they spend all winter. So I think at this point there's a pretty good sense of generally where they winter, but it's still kind of just like they just go somewhere down there. And because they really do spend almost their entire life in the air. So it's just hard to pin down a bird that never lands, right? But there's cool stories about how people first kind of cued in on the fact that chimney swifts were wintering in the Amazon. There was someone down there who was interacting with local tribes in the Amazon who saw that somebody had like a bracelet that had all these little metal chains on it. And they looked and realized that they were little bird bands, the things they put around birds' feet at banding stations. And so they borrowed them and brought them back and figured out, oh, these are all chimney swift bands, where they were hunting chimney swifts and they were pulling these little bands off, and they're like, oh, it's like jewelry, so they were wearing them. That, I think, was like the first hard evidence that chimney swifts were hanging out in this part of the world. But they do go all the way down to the Amazon and just hang out down there, which is really cool, I think. And in the summertime, we get them in the eastern U.S., kind of all throughout, but in increasingly smaller numbers. So like we said, they spend most of their lives airborne. They can't really perch. They just cling to vertical walls inside chimneys and hollow trees and caves more naturally. In a chimney, you'll actually only have one pair of nesting swifts. They will tolerate other non-breeders, but if they're actually nesting in the chimney, there's just going to be one pair. Now, in migration, especially in the fall, once they're starting to stage and get ready to all make this big movement, you can have chimneys that have thousands of swifts in them, right? They're all kind of moving down the country, getting ready. There's a few spots in northwest Arkansas where, counts, you sit around at night and you watch them all start to wheel around in circles, and eventually they all kind of funnel into the chimney at the same time. So you count the ones that have gone in. That's how people do surveys. And there are a few sites around here where they've counted over 1,000 in one chimney. So it's a thing worth paying attention to, especially in the fall when the numbers really start to get big. But even today, you go out and you might see swifts just kind of wheeling around in the air around town. All right, next bird. This exotic looking thing. This one I will definitely play a song for because it is all part of the experience. Yeah. The yellow-billed cuckoo. Sorry, let him finish. When I started birding around here, I was like shocked that this bird existed in in my backyard, right? I have this bird in my backyard. I live right in the middle of town. They're not a ton around town, but this is a bird that is not uncommon in Northwest Arkansas, but they're really good at being still. They like to just sit and not move, which makes them very hard to see. But they do vocalize, and that is the best way to find yourself a yellow-billed cuckoo. So this is a slender, long-tailed bird, brown above, white below, yellow bill, it's kind of curved. The underside of the tail actually has these large white spots. Looks very tropical, exotic to me. The song of the cuckoo is that sort of guttural, kind of rhythmic thing that we were hearing. They also do this sort of knocking call. It's like a talk. I'm just gonna play it. I'm not gonna say what it is. I think this is the one. Yeah. So I'd say in the summer that sound you've probably heard. And you might not have even registered that was a bird. But at this time of year, that's what I usually hear when I'm cueing in on a cuckoo. Just that kind of rhythmic talk sound. Most of the time you'll just hear that, and you're lucky if then you can see it. But it's at least a good clue to know where to look. They're stealthy, they're shy, they like to stay in dense forests and riparian areas, often motionless. Look where they go, way down in South America, and all the way up here. So they really travel a great distance over the course of a year. Also arrive in more like late April here. Usually leave by November. I think they're mostly gone. I think that's cool that their winter range is really kind of specifically down there. That's Argentina and is that Paraguay? Oh boy, geography. Down there. Fun facts about the yellow-billed cuckoo. They feed mainly on caterpillars and other insects. Those tent caterpillars, I think some people call them bagworms, they actually really like that, which I think is a good thing, right? They can kind of keep those in check. They're among the few bird species that are able to eat hairy caterpillars. Random fact. They don't always lay their eggs all at once either. They can actually stretch the time between each egg laying up to 5 days. So sometimes by the time the last egg is hatching, the first egg is like almost big enough to fledge and leave the nest. And I think there's a strategy there where like over the course of the laying, if like resources are changing, drought, they can modify better. They can sometimes lay their eggs in other birds' nests. This is like a classic kind of cuckoo behavior. They don't always do it, but I've heard they can do it. Especially if it's like getting to be the end of the season and they're holding on to that last egg and they're like, oh, things aren't going well, I'm just gonna put this one in the other basket. And colloquially, these things might be referred to as rain crow. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that. Apparently it's for their tendency to call at the sound of thunder. Not something I've ever witnessed, I can say, but I just like, every time I see a cuckoo, I think rain crow. I just think these kind of older colloquial names are cool. All right, the next one is a bit of a cheat. You may have seen this bird at your feeder, but I don't consider it to be a proper sort of all the time feeder bird. And it's just lovely, so I just had to throw it in here. I'll play you a song. All right, if you're ever at Lake Fayetteville, going around the bike path in the summer, I guarantee you're going to hear this. It's the song of the indigo bunting. Also quite ubiquitous, but not always the easiest to see. A lot easier to hear. This is, I wouldn't say, large tanager with hefty bill. That might actually be from a different slide. Let's ignore that first bullet. this is a bird that the male is entirely blue, right? Females, not so much. Pale brown, whitish throat, a little bit of blue in the tail if they're turned around the right way. That song is the best way to find an indigo bunting. It's really sharp, kind of high-pitched, and those repeated phrases, they're usually in couplets like that. The mnemonic here is fire, fire, where, here, here. There's a lot of variation, but usually it's little, 2 of this, 2 of that, 2 of this. That's the pattern that I listen for. And then just that kind of piercing quality. That'll cue you in on an indigo bunting. They like these kind of shrubby areas at the edge of forests and fields, which, we have a lot of around here. And we just have a lot of these birds. They're quite abundant. You can see how deep the purple is around like Arkansas and Missouri. Like we're really in the core of where these birds are really abundant in the summertime. We're right in indigo bunting alley. All right, fun facts about indigo buntings. There's actually no blue pigment in the feathers of an indigo bunting. This is something we like to talk about on bird walks when there's nothing to do. It's not really blue. It's just that the color is what they call structural. It's caused by the refraction of light that's sort of giving you back blue. It's kind of similar to why the sky is blue, right? So because of this, the shade of an indigo bunting really changes based on the lighting that you're looking at it in. If you look at these things backlit, it almost looks like a black bird. Like you think where's that beautiful blue bird I saw in my field guide? You've got to get these guys in the right light to really give you that glowing blue. But that's kind of what's cool about it, is sometimes it's kind of grayish and sometimes it's azure and ultramarine. It's just a really neat bird to look at in the binoculars because you always get a different experience. And I think this is cool. This is a bird that learns its song. Some birds just come out of the egg and it's just in their brain. This bird learns its song, and apparently they don't learn it from their fathers. They learn it from other nearby males. I don't know if this is a weird teenager rebellion thing. I'm sure there's a sort of evolutionary benefit to not doing the exact same thing as dad did, but something, this the neighbors. But I just thought that was cool that they're not learning the song from the parent, but from the nearby males. But you still have these local songs that have been studied and can persist up to 20 years, and they gradually change as new singers add their own novel variations. So these birds that learn songs, it's really cool because they're really kind of have these local dialects, and it's like this oral tradition that's been passed down. I just think it's so cool that birds do that. All right, what's this bird? I'm going to play you. It's called. This is one of the more famous. I heard someone say they know. Oh, this is another cheat. You might have seen this at your bird feeder, but I bet it was on the ground. It might have jumped up into the tray. Drink your tea. This is the eastern towhee. I think drink your tea was one of the first bird song mnemonics I learned. I like that one. I think it's a good fit. Some of them I don't get, but drink your tea, I think that's perfect. This is a big, striking, it's actually a sparrow. One of the more flashy sparrows. Black above, bright rufous on the sides, white belly. The female down here is a lot browner, but overall it's kind of the same general pattern. They are skulky little seed eaters, which is why sometimes you see them underneath your bird feeder. But because they're skulky and hidden, I wanted to throw them in here because I think they still get missed by a lot of people. This, in the world of birding, we talk about spark birds. The bird that really just got you hooked. And for me, when I was just getting into birding, I was back here during college. and I joined a Christmas bird count with Joe Neal, and he sent me out to somewhere on Mount Sequoia with some birders, and this bird popped up in a tree on the street with I'd played with a friend on this street when I was little. I was just shocked that this bird has been in town all my life, and I'd never seen it, and it looked so cool. And so I always credit the eastern towhee as being my spark bird, which is why it had to make it in here. I think they're really cool. They like brushy habitats, sunny clearings, urban thickets, old farmland. It's classic towhee. This bird, we actually have quite a few of them even in the wintertime. But sort of just throughout the year. They still kind of, as a population, move up and down, but we can see them here pretty much year-round, a little bit less common in the winter. But my parents' house, there's a towhee that always hangs out in the wintertime. And I think they just look even prettier in the winter because, that color. So if your feeders are near enough a brushy vegetated edge, you might get these things venturing out to eat fallen seed. That name towhee actually comes from this 2-note alarm call they do, which I don't think sounds much like towhee, but it's another one of these birds that's named after what it sounds like. I think I have the call here. Let's see if towhee? I don't know. I think of it as more like a shrink. But that's why they're called towhees and not sparrows, apparently. And these actually used to be considered part of the same species as what we call the spotted towhee in the West, which has a little more white kind of spotting in the wings. They used to all be considered the rufous-sided towhee together, and these things got split out. So if you get an old enough field guide, you might actually still see this called the rufous-sided towhee. It's one of these birds that's got this neat kind of east-west split in the U.S. that's a sort of side effect of when there were glaciers that were actually kind of like splitting the country in two. So these two populations got split for long enough that they actually changed enough to speciate. And we decided, we're going to call them separate species now. Oh, that was too soon. We're done with towhee, right? Did we get enough on towhee? All right. Another not so beautiful picture, but this is probably how you're going to see this bird. Pretty common, increasingly common around town. I saw one of these just over Gully Park today. That silhouette is the best way to kind of figure out what you're looking at here. This is one of my favorite birds, the Mississippi kite. I just feel like a lot of people don't realize this bird exists here. You look up and you think, I don't know, it's a vulture or a red-tailed hawk maybe. This is a long-winged raptor with narrow, pointed wings, gray overall, white head. Sometimes you can see that red eye. Just a really cool bird, really graceful in flight, fluid wing beats, long glides, and they're really good at maneuvering in the air because they're catching insects in flight. They prefer kind of riparian woodlands, but occasionally close to humans. And in Fayetteville, we're blessed with quite a few pairs of these hanging around. I'd see them throughout the day, but especially at dusk, they just kind of get up and move around. So if you really get an eye for this shape, that kind of wedge-shaped tail and those thinner tapered wings, you can see these birds. We'll be looking out for them in the morning. Maybe we might catch one just flying over us. They also, like the cuckoo, are going from pretty far down south in South America up here. You can see we're just kind of at the north of their range in the U.S. They really don't get that far north. In the not so long ago, say early 2000s, this bird was really rare here in Northwest Arkansas. And they've just been creeping northward such that, just in the last 10 or 15 years, they've really become a lot more common here than they were. And that's, partly because we're just right at that bleeding edge of where they are. And like many birds, their range is slowly kind of eking northward as climate changes. They are insectivores. They really like cicadas, which is, if it's a good cicada year, I guess it's good for Mississippi kites. They're colony nesters, but out east, they're generally more solitary. And they've got some cool names: blue kite, mosquito hawk, locust eater. I just think these are really cool birds. That picture, that's a cicada. That's a young one on the left, eating a cicada that was caught by the adult on the right. That was taken right here in town, right near Gully Park. All right, we're down to the last chunk of them. I'm going to go a little faster here so we have time for questions, because I've gotten a little too excited about some of these birds and I spent too much time on them. So this handsome fellow is the orchard oriole. You maybe have heard of the Baltimore oriole. They're a little more famous. We actually have way more orchard orioles here in the summertime. A few Baltimores hang out, but this is a kind of rusty red thing. It's a bit smaller than the Baltimore oriole. But just gorgeous. And down here, that's actually a young male. It's got that black pattern on the face, but the female's also just kind of more yellow. They really like open woodlands, pastures, farms. If you go out like camping at a state park around here, I just feel like usually you're going to hear an orchard oriole. They're pretty common, but just hard to find. I'll just go straight to the range map here. They get pretty high up through the Midwest. And yeah, they have these cool hanging basket nests. All the orioles do this. I just think they're gorgeous, intricate. Yeah, that's all we need to say about orchard oriole. All right, do you know who this guy is? I'm going to play the song because it's iconic. Yeah. This is the eastern meadowlark. So we're stretching now beyond the backyard a little bit, but our proverbial backyard in Northwest Arkansas has plenty of hay fields around the edges, and that's where you're going to actually see quite a few of these things. This is kind of a classic song of the grasslands. These birds get up on a perch and they just blast this song, and they're very cool birds. So yeah, streaked brown above, that V on the breast is kind of the classic. If they're facing you, it's usually a pretty easy thing to spot. And that song, that high-pitched, clear, whistling song is just wonderful. This is what their range map looks like. As you can see, the purple means year-round. We've got them pretty much throughout the year here, although there's some kind of up and down movement, so some of the individuals might change out. But you can see them here year-round. Woolsey Wet Prairie is a great place in town to see a lot of meadowlarks. And it's not actually a lark. It's a member of the blackbird family. And the males have all kinds of variation in their songs. That's all I got here. That one's just loaded up with caterpillars. I think that's cool. Who knows what this bird is? Yeah. This one's pretty famous. I don't think you can live around here and not have spotted one of these birds. But they're just so cool. We're so lucky to have these things. Not hard to identify. They really perch prominently, usually up on like telephone wires. They've got a call. It's just this low kind of pick noise. I wouldn't say I always pick up on these birds by their call, but just that tail. They like prairies and open fields. This is what their range looks like. This is why we're so lucky. They're really range restricted in the U.S. We're just right out on the edge here. But if you're a birder anywhere else kind of in the U.S., like we're in Scissortail Alley. And I think it's really cool. I just never get tired of looking at these things. Yeah, this is a picture of one with a big old moth. If you guys have ever played the game Wingspan, this is the bird that adorns the cover, Scissortail. And I like this name for him, the Texan bird of paradise. I think that's pretty cool. All right, last two birds. We're going to the water. You probably don't all have lakes in your backyard, but if you head out to Lake Fayetteville, Lake Sequoia, even just a farm pond, you might see this bird. This is the green heron. So blue herons get all the all the fame, right? Because they just sit out in the open. But their little brother, the green heron, is my personal favorite. I'd say about football sized. This is a small dark heron. It's got this kind of almost jade green in the back and breeding plumage, rusty colored neck. They're pretty distinctive in flight. Often you see them kind of crossing marshy areas. If you get a sort of eye for what that looks like, that's a good way to find them. But they're very secretive, right? They kind of hang around on the edges of wetlands. They're usually pretty still. So this is a bird you kind of have to seek out and look for. Scan the edges with your binoculars, but they're quite abundant here. This is, there's nothing too exciting to say about their range map. Oh, this is cool. They're one of the few tool-using birds in the world. So they'll actually take little like feathers and insects and stuff and drop them on the water to entice fish up. So they actually kind of like go fishing by just putting things out on the surface and then trying to catch fish. I don't know if that makes them tool using or not, but I think it's cool. And they can actually swim a little bit if needed. I just learned that recently. All right, last bird. You guys know what this is? Yeah, I had to throw in a duck. I heard it back there, the wood duck. This is another bird that you gotta look for it to find it, right? They're quite good at hiding, but boy, are they pretty. If you can get one, a breeding male in the binoculars, it'll knock your socks off. These birds are, they're actually tree ducks, right? Which is partly why they're so hard to find. You find them around here in wetlands, woodland swamps, but always kind of hiding. They're very skittish. This is what their range looks like. So we're sort of in that purple zone in Arkansas. You can kind of see wood ducks around here throughout the year, but they're certainly more common kind of during migration. And then in the right spots, they do breed here in the summertime. They've got strong claws for gripping bark, perching on branches. They actually nest in holes in trees up high. And when their young hatch, pretty soon, in order to get to the water, they just leap out of these cavities, up to 50 feet. So watching wood duck babies come out of their cavities and just flail down to the ground. I mean, they're not flying, they're just like dropping, is a sight to behold, apparently. And they seem to be able to do it without injury, and then they make their way to the water, and then from then on, they're hanging out in the water. And they've got all sorts of cool names just because it's a dazzling duck. Acorn duck, tree duck, bush duck, swamp duck, squealer. They've got kind of a squealy sound. Wood ducks, so good. All right, so did you keep count? We got through 15. I have a few tips for getting started with birding. We'll just rattle them off real quick, and then we can have a little bit of time for questions. If you want to get into this, binoculars, good place to start. These are some brands. Look them up online. You can't go wrong. You've got field guides. We've got books in the back that are books you can check out here from the library. So use your local library to go find yourself a field guide and get started there. There's a bunch of websites and apps that help with this. I mentioned Merlin. All About Birds is another Cornell site that's got a lot of good kind of introductory information on bird identification. I'd recommend joining an online community. There's a lot of Facebook groups that are into like, what's this bird? Help me figure out what it is. I think that's always a fun way to get into it. And then finding a bird outing, I think, is key. This is how I got into birding. I joined a local Audubon walk, and just going out and birding with people really teaches you a lot. You learn a lot. It's fun. They're almost always free. So that's why I'm offering a walk tomorrow. I've got some references here. You can blow right through them. Here's all the birds we covered today. Aren't they glorious? And yeah, we can do a few questions if you have some for 5 minutes. Oh, thank you. That's the bird walk, the ramble, 9 a.m. tomorrow. There's information about it on the website. And in the back, there's a clipboard. If you want to put your email address on there, I can just send you this presentation. if you want to just use it as reference. So feel free to do that. I will email you a copy of the presentation if you would like. And yeah, any questions?
As far as the outing tomorrow, do you have to sign up or just show up down there?
There is a registration on the library page,
Yeah.
but I believe it's not required. You can just show up. It's mostly just so that we could email people if we needed to cancel, but weather's looking good. I don't believe we will have to cancel. Yeah.
Well, I see the kites and other insectivores way up there, and I'm thinking, what are the insects doing way up there? That's always puzzled me. In fact,
Yeah.
I used to fly small airplanes, and I would hit insects thousands of feet up in the air. Do you have any idea about that? That's just puzzling.
I know there are hatches where bugs at times will go way up, but I'm no entomologist.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the time they're just flying, having a good time, riding thermals.
Yeah.
But you can see when they're really hunting.
Yeah.
I mean, I've usually seen that lower down, but maybe that's just because I could see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's bugs up there. I mean, the kites, the chimney swifts, they're all up there just munching. So there's stuff up there going on. Apparently, if you're a weather person and you look at radar, you can see birds take off in radar, but bugs also show up in radar signals. And we at the lab have this project called Birdcast, where we do bird migration forecasting based on radar data. We turn off Birdcast in the summer because it's too hard to separate bugs from birds. Because there's so many bugs in the summer, especially in the south. So I know they're up there, and they're not, it's a significant mass of life that's up in the sky.
How old do birds get?
Oh
Where
man.
they live? All different species,
Oh,
different
yeah, I
times?
mean, have you ever heard of Wisdom the albatross that's like 90 years old or something?
What's the common?
A lot of these birds live not very long. I mean, like 3 years
How
is
many
good.
times do they make their migrations?
Well, if they only live 3 years, then 2 to 3 times. Some of there's variation. Like some of these, the oldest have been 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. But it's a hard life for a bird. It's definitely like a numbers game. There are just so many ways a bird can die.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 3 to 4 years for a lot of these little songbirds is the average.
Which animals hunt the birds?
I don't know, anything that can get them, right?
Well, I know, but I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
does anybody up in the air get them, or is it usually?
yeah, well, a lot of birds hunt birds, right?
Okay, so your hawks.
Like we've got Cooper's hawks here, which are they eat other birds, right? They're common in urban environments because they know how to pluck birds off of bird feeders. So there are a lot of birds that eat birds. I'd say around here, your cats are probably eating a lot of birds.
Yeah.
And yeah, then just all sorts of other stuff. It's hard to be a bird. Yeah.
So these birds, they sing so beautifully. Do only the male sing, or both of them can sing? And if the female can sing also, are the songs the same or different?
Yeah, that's a great question. Do just the males sing or the females? I think traditionally, everyone assumed that just males sing. I think more recent research has shown that there are some species where the females sing. I don't know a lot about it, but I know that this is kind of like a new sort of area to explore. Like how many birds are the females singing? Because there are definitely some where the females sing a lot. I don't know how much the song differs, but this has been like a blind spot of bird research. Like as with anything, there were just sort of preconceived notions that just kind of continued people down particular research paths. And we don't study female birds. There's just a lot that's not known about female birds because just the males, tend to look brighter and more colorful. But this is another one that people are starting to dig into. For sure, some of them do sing.
I recently took a bird down to that rehabilitation place.
Mhm.
That was just fascinating.
Yeah.
What they do
Was
down
it
there.
North Song
Yeah.
Rehabilitation? Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
that place is cool. If you ever get a chance to check out North
It
Song
is.
Wild Bird Rehab, they're just getting started, and that's a good resource. All right, it's 3 o'clock, so
Nice.
I have to bid you farewell. But I do hope some of you will join in the morning, and if not, Northwest Arkansas Audubon Society has many field trips that are always free and open to the public. We do at least one a month, so just look us up online, and you're always welcome to join. Thanks.